Good morning, everyone. My name is, camera isn't on. My name is Matt Pearsall, and I am the community manager here at the Social Emotional Learning and Education community. And I'm really glad to be able to join you all once again for the next in our SELinEdu Speakers Series. And joining us again, following up on the conversation that we started last week, is Gunjan Tomar from DPS International in Delhi, India. And Gunjan, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us today. And I'm really looking forward to pick up where we left off. By the way, if you didn't get a chance to catch Gunjan's first talk last week, if you are on Facebook, the link is right there in the event, and in the post for the event. And if you're on YouTube, it should be right here in the same channel that you're watching right now. If you're on Twitter, you're gonna have to go back a little bit in the archives and find it. So with that being said, Gunjan, good evening, and welcome to the SELinEdu community.
Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you for inviting me again. It's a pleasure to be here with you all again. And we are going to take this forward by, having a second part of empathy and design thinking. And we are still going to reflect on this equation of design thinking is equal to methods, not magic. So here we go. A little recap of what we did last time was definition of design thinking, what it means, what is design thinking, and also to reflect on small changes too can make a powerful impact. Let's recollect what we discussed about design thinking in education is a mindset and a process approach to learning, collaboration, and problem solving. And all three words, mindset, collaboration, and problem solving, very clearly defines the domain of social emotional well-being or social emotional learning too. So when we think about design thinking in education, so let's think it from the perspective of who this education is for. Uh, what are we doing through the process of education? So this education, the center is the student for whom the education system is being designed to impart education. So this is what an empathy map of a student who is going from college to work has to talk about, and let's try to understand what he or she has to say. And the stakeholder or the user here is a young student who's graduating soon and will start working. What does he or she has to say about education?
This is such an I'm sorry to break in. I should say this is a really neat way to frame it. I've never seen an empathy map before, but I really like this.
Okay. This is empathy map. It helps the people to understand the problem from the perspective of the user. It has also got the components of pains and gains too. So this is what the user had to say, or the stakeholder had to say. When I'm learning now, what I'm learning now won't be of any use when I start working, because future jobs, we don't know what future jobs are like. Young employees have difficulties getting along with their co-workers. If I had to search for a job now, I wouldn't know where to start. Anyway, I'll end up learning how to do my job by doing it. My diploma won't mean anything to the recruiters after 5 years. I have no idea of what will my job actually be, what I will be doing all day. This is what they had to say. This is what the stakeholder, he or she, had to say about the education. And if you try to establish a connect between education and future job, this is what he or she thinks about it. Most theoretical knowledge is useless in the workplace. A diploma doesn't mean much versus work experience. Work is very different from school, and I don't know anything practical, concrete about my future job. Searching for job is difficult, and I don't know how to do it. I will have a hard time fitting into the workplace at. And what he or she feels about education and future jobs is fear, apprehension of first work experience, stressed not to fit in, uselessness of my knowledge, lost in job seeking process. so many things, then it makes us think, what are we looking at, what are we
Oh,
doing? And
uh,
when we try to think it from the perspective of this learner, this is an XYZ learner. So the problem statement is something of this kind, which includes the stakeholder first, then the need, followed by an insight into it. So here is a possible problem statement looks like: a fresh out of school student searching for job needs a way to be a better prepared for the working world, because the work environment is radically different from school, in which he spends his whole life so far. So this is something to think about: the purpose of education, how is it defined, why are we teaching, why education? Probably to get future jobs. But how do future jobs, how do they look like? How do future, has anybody seen what the future job is? How do they look like? The answer is not sure. Then how can we help? We are in education system. How do we help? If we need to, if we are there in the education system, what are we doing in the education system? We can help by equipping students with problem solving skills, mindset, and collaboration, because these are the skills that, irrespective of the fact which domain are you in, we will need it and will help them in their future jobs. How can we do this? Give me 1 minute. I think there is some issue with the. How can we do that? Let's try design thinking way, emphasizing more on empathy. So when we were discussing design thinking way and empathy, I remember you saying, it can be very beautifully fitted into future jobs. Sorry, community services. So
mhm.
if we try to analyze it from that perspective, community services. So when we talk about what is the need, examining them from the perspective of empathy, what is the need of that particular community service that we are thinking of doing it? So this is more to do with empathy. And then we are able to understand what the problem is, how do we need to contribute to the community service, helps us defining the problem. Then identifying possible solutions is all about ideating. Shortlisting the best solutions will be prototyping, and working out the feasibility will also be prototyping, and implementing, rechecking, and planning to get the desired results will be testing. If we put this whole process of thinking into a design thinking process. This was a case study, and I would like you to guess this. uh,
Take your time,
and
everybody.
yeah, take your time, everybody. And this was something, I did. This was also out of experience, where there were, 5 sections, with whom I had. One time when we had told them what the whole workshop, or what the whole discussion session was all about, we didn't find the participants that enthusiastic. So we thought of kind of putting this first slide as a hook slide for them to keep interpreting. So this was a unit that they were doing. It was on peace and conflict. So they had invited me as a guest speaker to understand, and we discussed about a scenario related to conflict resolution. So how it is conflict resolution, the Q1 tells you focus on the beginning letters of each picture's name to guess the first word. So beginning letter is CONFLICT is conflict. And then they could easily relate to the word because they were doing a unit of conflict resolution. So this is what the unit was. This is how we started. Uh, to set the stage, we just brainstorm some words that light us up, and then the words that scorch us. So these were, and we also asked them, how they felt. Have they ever felt hurt by someone's action, or how did that make them feel? So these were some of the responses: miserable, dejected, awful, sad. So we showed them this message. This was an online setup where the message was being enacted by two people online. And we had asked them to read the conversation between two friends. One was Naomi and her friend. The message from Naomi is in white, and the message from her friend is in blue. So how would you feel if you were Naomi's friend. Naomi says, "You are a liar." What do you mean? You said you couldn't come to my birthday party because of soccer. Maria saw you at the mall. I did have soccer. It got cancelled because of weather. Mom made me run errands with her. Whatever, you are the worst friend ever. You are so mean for saying that. These are day-to-day scenarios in our classrooms. So we ask the students to, think about this scenario. Can they relate to these scenarios? They said, yeah, very, very often this happens in our class, and this is what we land up into. So these were some guiding questions that were being given to the students to reflect on the situation and, to help them understand the situation better. So these were the responses, and they were Padlet links and Wakelet links which were being shared to share the responses. And below each question, they shared their own understanding of what the situation was. And when in the process of answering the questions, they were able to empathize with the situation and understand what the situation is, and were able to define it. So we asked them to understand and spell out the problem. This is what they thought about, and they shared. Naomi could have shared her feelings with her friends instead of sending a hurtful message. Instead of using the word "you" to blame each other, both the friends could have addressed each other on by how they felt. This could have helped them to understand each other's situation better. So they again reflected on this message where all the time this word "you" have been used. So they came to the conclusion that instead of saying "you," they could have addressed each other by saying "I," how they felt. It was more sounding like accusing each other when they use the word "you." And the problem could have been solved if they would have used adjectives, or they could have used "I" words. So these were some of the responses when what will the "I" message look like. They said stating the problem by stating only the facts, not getting carried away by emotions, being respectful even if there is a conflict, conveying their feelings honestly, and the tone of the message can be calmer. No hurtful words to be used. They are friends. So this is what their iMessage that they drafted, which was the prototype of their iMessage. iMessage contains three important pieces. Begin the statement with "I" instead of "you." State your feeling. State the problem, only the facts. No hurtful words or accusations. State how it has made you feel. And this is what the final message would look like. I feel upset when you say rude things because I feel not cared for. An "I" message should always be said in a calm voice with eye contact, confidence, and respectful body language. This was something that came out of brainstorming. So this was a simple "I" message which was drafted to them, and these were the situations which they were being asked to choose any one and draft their own "I" message. This was the testing phase of how well they had understood drafting "I" message. What are the components that they need to keep in mind while drafting their "I" message? So now we introduced this to them. We said, you have been learning about visible thinking routines in classroom, assuming this cycle as another visible thinking routines to address the problem. So let's try to understand different components of this kind of visible thinking routine, which we call design thinking way. The first step is empathize. When I asked them the meaning of empathize, some of them could answer. Then we give them a liberty of looking at Google and sharing their understanding with us. All of them could understand what empathize means, putting yourself in other shoes, knowing how exactly what other person exactly feels like. So all these things we step by step kind of collaboratively defined each step, which was empathize and defining, then ideating and prototyping and testing. Ideating, maybe had asked them to remove TE of ideate and come up with something that they can relate to, that they said ideating is like brainstorming ideas, and prototyping is when they googled out many versions of prototyping came into, and which we together build on one kind of definition of what prototype is and what testing is. Then there was another task for them. In the process of discussing about conflict resolution, what did we do? Did we use this process there in the process of conflict resolution when we were discussing? Where was empathize? They discussed it with their friends, and this is what they came up with. They said, the guiding questions helped us to empathize with the situations. And when we were listening to the enacted version of the messages which were being shared between two friends, it could help us understand, what the situation was like. So this was the empathize part of this visible thinking routine, or this thinking methodology of design thinking. We asked them, okay, then what did we do after this? There's something called define. Where did we define the problem? Did we define the problem? This was what their response was: understanding and defining the problem. Each friend, instead of sharing how they felt, blamed each other. So that is how they were able to understand what the problem was. Ideate and prototype. Where did we do this? When we were brainstorming solutions, that is what the students shared, that when we were brainstorming solutions and choosing the best possible solutions of the ideas brainstormed, here is where we did, ideating and prototyping. And this iMessage that we drafted was a prototype which we tested by empathizing with the situation. How did we test? Drafting appropriate solution according to what we understood and testing the same again by empathizing with the situation. This was the drafted iMessage, which they relooked, and they kept checking, have they included all the components? Are the components of all the iMessage, kind of defining their problem or defining the solution that they were looking at? So yes, we did it. So small steps. I had shared a very we were doing a session with teachers. So there's another example of what design thinking is all about. Give me 1 minute. I'll quickly share my screen and stop sharing this and start sharing that. This was a session where teachers had to identify the needs of design thinking of various aspects of social emotional domain. This is just a beginning process. I will quickly show, when we were saying, taking small steps, why not to adopt this thinking methodology? We had divided the teachers into 5 groups, and we gave one component of social emotional learning to them. One had self-awareness, one was self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision making. This is what, based on their school dynamics, their students' needs, they had brainstormed. They were trying to empathize with the situation of, we had told them these are the components of self-awareness. So what do you think? Where is the problem? How can you define the problem? If the problem is being defined, then we will be able to, share the same with the counseling department, or share the same with the community, the teacher community, to find solutions of these problems. So these were some of the ways in which, we are just trying to use design thinking as a methodology of thinking.
This is really neat. I mean, one of the things I really appreciate seeing here is this kind of the breadth of this. You started with an example of using design thinking in the context of a college student, and then an example of using it with younger children, and finish off with educators using this sort of empathy-based design thinking to solve problems that they themselves are experiencing. So I think it's neat to see this applied at so many different levels.
Yeah. So that was it from my side for today. And that's it.
All right. Well, Gunjan, thank you so much for coming to join us again. I really appreciate it. Just a second. I got a little slide I want to put up, the same slide I put up at the end of every one of our sessions. Just to say thank you very much for coming and joining us, and also for kind of just bringing us the conversation. This is one of the things I really love about the SEL education community, is everyone coming together and sharing their expertise and their experience, and I learn new stuff all the time.
And Thank you so much for inviting me, and I keep learning a lot from the SELinEdu community, and I keep, practicing it, and I keep putting it somewhere or the other. Some great things that are happening
Mhm.
on this forum. So it's a pleasure to be a part of it. Thank
Yeah,
you so much, Matt.
of course. And if you would like to be a part of it, if you're not a part of it already, or if you haven't visited in a while, stop by our Facebook group to see the conversations and join in. We'd appreciate seeing you there. And until then, take care, have a good day, and we will see you in the community.